Hi, gentlemen.
How's it going?
How are you guys today?
We're good, man. You doing all right this morning?
I am. I'm doing very well.
Awesome. What are your big plans for the day?
Well, we have a booth in the vendor area and have a couple presentations, one at 1:30 and then another one of our folks at 3. And we've got the keynote going on now. And one of our folks, Brad Wade, is the opening speaker.
Yeah, well, that's you say kind of one of your folks. He's through the best keynote program that EduTech is heading up.
Yep.
So
that's
cool.
One of our programs, and we have plenty to do. But I had a question for you guys.
Okay.
I always enjoy talking to you because you get to talk to so many people. You kind of have a finger on the pulse of what's going on around the country and in education. So. What's going on? What are you guys seeing that's cool and interesting?
You want to take that one?
Sure. What's really cool and interesting is the big move this year is, I think, in technology integration. It's like finally the light switch went off and they went, technology integration should be no different than pencil to paper. And we've been preaching that for years. And I think in our push to get technology into the classrooms and into schools, it's been at the very forefront. Like, we've got, every kid has to have a device and every kid has to do that. And now they've started to realize, oh wait, it's just pencil and paper. It's just the new format. And I think that's the big thing in maker spaces. I think what Kevin's been preaching a lot about and Ginger, let's get some hands-on in here. That's the big one. I mean, now kids don't even touch computers half the time, they might design something for 3D printing, but they're just making a 3D printing piece to go over here and screw it onto this, robot or a cardboard car or a rocket ship or something that they're building with their hands. And I think that's the next big trend that I see is I have the hardest time in the world finding a plumber, and we've realized that in education, that vocational jobs are a really big deal.
Yeah.
And that's what's, and look at what the country realizes. Our infrastructure, it's time to rebuild the infrastructure of this country, and we need kids that are problem solvers and that are going to go out and build houses and build roads and build bridges and fix the plumbing and explode cannonballs across the river. But, I was thinking last night as I was riding the ferry back and forth, how many guys know how to pilot a boat and fix a diesel engine in that thing?
Yeah.
Very few anymore. And so that's what I see. That's what's trending to me this year.
Well, that's what I think that kind of feeds into. I still think that the whole problem-based learning, project-based learning is still really on the upswing. I don't believe for a second that it has plateaued and started coming down the other side yet, as often happens with anything in education, right? We usually stick with something for a couple of years and then it starts to lose favor and turn, for something else. And I think a lot of
we revert to the past.
Well, there's a lot of that, yes. But I think that again, problem-based learning and project-based learning in the context of all of these other different things, whether it's vocation or whether it's using very high-level math to calculate where a new planet might be or whatever it is, solving those problems across multiple subject areas, getting teachers to work together who are traditionally, well, I'm the 9th grade English teacher and that's what I teach. You have to go beyond that now. Yes, exactly. This is audio only, so you're good.
Yeah.
Those, to me, that's still very much at the forefront of where education is and where education's still going. Because I think we still have a lot of folks who they don't know how to get outside of that box that either they've been put in or they put themselves in terms of I teach this and this is what I teach. And that's fine, but you have to look at the bigger picture. So how does what you teach attach to what, this quote-unquote math teacher teaches and what this other person teaches? How does that all tie together? How does it all fit together for the benefit of the student who's got to come out of our education system ready to actually solve world problems that are beyond whether or not you can find any Pokemon while you're walking around.
Yeah.
You know,
Interesting. Yeah.
that's what I think, for what it's worth.
What are you guys seeing up?
So what are you seeing in Kansas?
Neck of the woods?
You know, I think a lot of us are talking about the same thing, and we use a little different language. And we have a new commissioner in Kansas.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was going to ask you about.
That is doing an absolutely phenomenal job, Dr. Randy Watson, and Randy was actually one of our superintendents in ESTAC before he took that position.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we've had a lot of interaction and working with Randy over the years.
Sure.
And we're seeing in fact, the presentation we're doing this afternoon is it's time for a new committee of 10. Okay. So, you know, a little history lesson. The Committee of 10 was formed in 1892, and basically they established our core curriculum that we still use today.
Okay.
And if you consider the time frame, basically what happened is the president of Harvard University was catching hell from his faculty because every kid came in with a different background, and they thought, we need to get together and define the college prep curriculum and use it across the country so that it makes our jobs easier.
Right.
Basically, is what they were saying.
Right.
Well, if you put it into context, in 1892, less than 10% of the population ever graduated from high school. The percentage that went to college was minuscule.
Yeah.
But the other thing that was occurring at that time was factories were starting to be built everywhere, and we were trying to acclimate kids from growing up and working on a farm to moving to the city and working in a factory.
Right.
And what we really needed were students that were compliant, that showed up in the morning when the bell rang, they started working, and at some point we said stop and eat lunch, and they stopped and ate lunch, and then go back to work, and at the end of the day we'll ring a bell and quit working.
Right.
And oh, by the way, while you're doing that, don't think, just do what we tell you.
Right.
And you know, the mentality was the smart people would tell us what to do and everyone else would do what they were told. And that's how schools were organized. Sure. They still are.
Right. Yeah,
And the problem is you don't want employees that just show up and do what they're told. You want that think, are creative and innovative, and more. There's no such thing as the typical job. Anymore. And for 75 years there was a typical job. Right. And you know, it's interesting as we've really shifted the focus in the state of Kansas from standardized tests to are our kids being successful in post-secondary education? And by that, it's not just four-year colleges. It's any kid that gets a four-year degree. Okay, I shouldn't say that. All four-year degrees are not created equal.
No, right.
And
Absolutely.
if you want to see some graduates from four-year schools that maybe should have picked a different path, our offices are in a mall, and I can show you college graduates in the mall selling shoes.
Right.
Because throughout the process, they didn't learn anything that was a skill that people would pay for.
Yeah.
And like it or not, you know, in fact, I just read recently, UCLA has done a study for years and years and years, and they just simply ask students, why are you going to college?
Yeah.
For the first time in history, the vast majority are saying to get a better job.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're looking at, and when we say post-secondary, it includes plumbers. Right. You know, we talk about four-year degrees, two-year applied science degrees. You know, those are the electrical degrees, the fire science, the public safety. Kids that go for 2 years and get some kind of industry certification, or they don't even go 2 years. They don't get an associate degree, but they end up with a worthwhile industry certification.
Right.
Or military. Kids that go to the military can be very successful. We also talk about the kid that just gets a good job out of high school. About 8% of our jobs are high-pay, low-skill jobs. About 8%. So there are some of those jobs out there. Not many, but there are some of those out there. But what's interesting, when we started analyzing the data in Kansas, about 55% of our kids, more than half our kids, do not have high-skill training. That means 55% of our kids, our graduates, are chasing 8% of the jobs.
Right.
Yeah, that will.
You want a recipe to elect Donald Trump? Have 55% of your people not able to find a high-paying job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what we're talking about is we've got to reverse that. And it's not just about going to a four-year school. It's about any career path that any kid chooses.
Sure.
And I'll tell you a great story. A good friend of mine is a superintendent, and he was former high school principal, and he was telling me he ran into a former student in August. Out of 48 kids in the graduating class, this kid graduated 48th.
Oh,
Was a special needs student, but a great kid.
Sure.
Farm background, hard worker, great kid, did not fit into the academic scene. Okay? But the kid got a track scholarship to a community college, and he chose to go into the lineman program. Now, we've all seen those linemen work after a storm. They're the guy in the bucket up at the top of the pole stringing new wire.
Yeah.
And so this friend of mine was telling me that the kid's on track. He will actually finish his 18-month program in December, but he's going to stay in school in the spring semester to finish track because he went on track. And he asked him, he said, so he's in good standing. Yeah, he's right on target to get his certificate. What kind of money can you make doing that? And he said, if I stay locally, I'll make $50,000 a year with full benefits. If I'm willing to travel, I'll make $100,000 a year.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And the next question was, Max is a superintendent. And I said, Max, what do your starting teachers make? Mm-hmm. Not 50,000.
50,000.
Not 50,000. And we've got to validate and honor those kids just like we do the kid that goes to the University of Kansas.
Right.
And we got to get over the fact that if they don't go to the University of Kansas, we don't really care about them.
Right.
Because we got way too many kids that do not have the skills to move forward. And our focus in the state is shifting away from defining sex as sex. Success, Freudian.
We're not going to go there.
Defining success as high test scores to defining success at were you able to go to the next level and be successful,
Right.
which is way more important.
Right.
So,
Yes.
we're it's a fairly simple conversation to have. It is not easy to do.
No.
But you hit it right on the head. I'm going to tell you, when I need my toilet fixed, I want a plumber.
Right.
I don't want somebody with a philosophy degree. No offense.
Right.
And if you want to choose to get a philosophy degree, I'm okay with that.
Sure.
Just understand you're going to have $80,000 in debt and probably no job.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but just if you go in with your eyes open, I'm okay with whatever somebody chooses to do. What we have found is our kids at graduation time, and they say, what are you going to do next year? They all say, I'm going to college.
Yeah.
And the reality is the majority do not go to college. Mm-hmm. They just magically don't go anywhere.
Right.
And we've downgraded the importance of anything other than a 4-year degree.
Right. Yeah.
And we've got to quit doing that.
Oh, well, absolutely. Well, I mean, like you said, we downplay, had that student been asked, hey, what are you going to do? And that student said, well, actually, I'm going to, go on my track scholarship or, over to the community college and I'm going to learn to be a lineman and go, oh, well, yeah, okay, well, that's cool. Yeah, without, oh, yeah, and by the way, when I'm done, I'm going to make 50 to 100 grand a year.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, what? Yeah. And I think that's a big, definitely misconception. It's definitely not understood anyway about the alternatives to any type of, higher, quote unquote, higher ed pursuit.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. Jeff and I talk about this all the time. We have kids and students who, when they, depending on the school they go to and what's being offered there, but there are students who they can walk out of high school already having particular, say, computer industry standard certifications.
Yep.
Do they need a 4-year degree to go with that? No, they're already Microsoft certified or Cisco certified or whatever else. And instantly they're pulled in. Oh, you didn't go to college? Yeah, that's okay. But you've got the certification and you understand what's going on with our network and this kind of thing. So, yeah, we need to hire you at 50, 60, 70K right out of the chute.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
if we started digging into this 2 weeks ago, we had a college and career expo, and we had about 100 booths at this expo in the mall. They were throughout the mall, booths everywhere. We had about 100 booths. We did not invite the 4-year colleges. We invited the community colleges, the technical colleges, the apprenticeship programs. Some of the trade schools were represented, and then we invited businesses that hire those graduates. So, for example, Washburn Institute of Technology is a technical college, and one of their programs is a cooperative program with Train Heating and Air Conditioning. And we had a Train booth, people there, and then the tech college booth was right across from them. So if a kid walked up and said, what do I have to do to go to work for you at Train? The guy pointed over and said, you go to them for 2 years. And so it was really great. Well, like I said, we had about 100 booths. We had over 2,600 kids go through in 2 days.
Wow, that is phenomenal.
And it was the thing that was so interesting to me, and I'm fairly in tune to that stuff. But Mike Cook, our director, and I went around and we visited 10 or 11 of the community college, tech colleges last spring as we were setting this up. I was absolutely unaware of all the different types of programs that are available for kids that lead to industry certification and good jobs.
Right.
Everything from at Wichita Area Technical College. Now, you understand in Wichita we have a huge manufacturing of airplanes. In Wichita. And there is a 10-week program, sheet metal program, okay? And what the student learns to do is put rivets in an airplane. Did you fly an airplane to get here this week?
We did.
Did you want the skin to stay on the airplane?
Pretty much,
So you wanted a high-skilled worker putting the skin on that airplane. That's what they're trained to do. 10 weeks, okay? So I was visiting with the instructor, and I said, what's involved? He said, 10 weeks. I said, are there jobs? He said, oh, yeah, we can't get enough.
Wow.
Okay. What do they make? He said, well, doing that, they'll start at about $15 an hour, but there's a ton of overtime because we can't get enough and full benefits. He said, so basically our students will make $40,000 a year with full benefits with a 10-week program.
10 weeks. That's what I was just going to say.
10-week program.
10 weeks of training.
Yes.
40
and
grand.
What's happening is in the aerospace part of this technical college, then the next level, they call them stackable credentials, that if those kids go to work at Spirit Aerospace or Boeing or Beechcraft or Learjet, any of those, if they do a good job, if they work hard, those what we call soft skills, the company will pay to go to the next thing, which is, airframe and power, and then avionics. And oh, by the way, if you want to take your gen ed courses, you can leave with an associate degree. And now, lo and behold, you can get into any Regents University in the state with an associate degree. So we've got to get over the idea that if you want a 4-year degree, you got to go there right after high school. You don't. There's a really good alternate path. And in fact, in many ways it's a better path, because a kid that goes to a community college or a tech college and gets an associate degree comes out with no debt. Little or no debt. Rather than $40,000 in debt for the first 2 years at the University of Kansas, still looking at 2 more years and a total of $80,000 in debt.
Well, and thinking along those same lines, and again, we're making this assumption or presumption or whatever shun word you want to throw in there. That this particular student that we're referring to, or these particular students, are wanting to get a 4-year degree in whatever. Okay, so let's just say that that's what they're going to do. One of the issues I ran into when I came out of college was the adage of, well, we'd love to hire you, but you don't have experience. Well, how am I supposed to get experience if I don't?
If nobody will hire me.
So you get into that catch-22 conundrum. Well, by taking this alternate path here, after 10 weeks, these students are putting airplane skins together. They're getting the experience, and then the companies, again, apply yourself and work hard and do it.
Show up every day and work hard, do your job,
do what you're supposed to do, and but over time, then you get in with a company who says, yeah, we would love for you to get your 4-year degree, and we'll help you with time or financial situation, or whatever the companies offer as the incentive to go do that. Well, now that student has experience. Then that student has the degree, so that when they do come out on the other side, they go, hey, not only do I have my 4-year degree in avionics, but I actually have experience from when I was putting skins on on these airplanes here, plus whatever experience I got while I was working and going to college at the same time.
The other thing that's been interesting that we have found, a lot of our data is anecdotal, and we get it at graduation time. the high school principal publishes a program for graduation, and they list every kid and what they're going to do next
Right.
year. Okay, and they go through and count how many kids said they're going to college, and college is a euphemism for 4 years.
Right.
Okay, when we say college.
Right.
And the kids feel so much pressure to say they're going to
Right.
college. And huge percentages have no intention of ever going to a four-year college, but there's a social pressure to say they are. So then we publish and say 85% of our kids are going to college out of this high school. Nonsense.
Right.
They're not.
Yeah.
And what we're finding is typically that number's half that amount, in the
Right.
neighborhood of half that amount.
Well, okay, so for the sake of argument, what you find is, so 50% of that number ends up bunk. Well then, okay, so that leaves you with 50% of the students who said they were going to college are going to college. What percentage of those students actually end up sticking with it and
finishing,
graduate,
being successful?
college? And
I can tell you what we've seen in the data, and we're just really in the infancy of this.
Sure.
A school that sends kids to college, if half of their kids, if they're over 50% of their kids actually ever graduate, that's high.
Yeah.
High. And so then the other number you got to factor in, you got to go back to their ninth grade class and say, of that cohort group, how many kids started, because dropouts count too.
Right, exactly.
And we use an example that the commissioner uses all the time, that if you start with 100 kids and 15 drop out, which is about our average in the state of Kansas, 15% dropout rate, okay, 80% go to college. And that's with a wink, because that's a really high number. You're down to 68 kids.
Right.
Okay. If 60%, which is high, graduate, you're down to 41 kids.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you got 41% of your kids successful in any post-secondary, and we need 71%. Georgetown University, the Center for Education and Work, that's close to the title, tells us by 2020 we need about 72% of our kids to have some post-secondary success. A 4-year degree, 2-year degree, industry certification, military kind of stuff. We need 71%, and even using those numbers fairly high, we're at 41%.
Right.
The thing that has become clear to us, when people say we've got to bring manufacturing jobs back, we don't have workers that can do those jobs.
Right.
They don't have the skills because of technology. They don't have the skills to use the technology.
Well, and frankly, I mean, people complain about that all the time. All the jobs are going overseas, blah, blah. Yeah, that's because we don't have the people who can do the job.
Yeah.
That's why they went overseas in the first place. Yeah, part of it's cheap labor. I get that, but
Even that's
part of it is definitely the fact that we don't have the people with the skills to do those particular jobs.
Yeah. Even, and I recently read a story about one of the factories overseas that makes phones, cell phones. And they recently implemented 3,000 robots putting phones together. Guess who got laid off?
Yeah.
All that low-skilled labor got laid
Exactly.
off. Now, they had to hire a bunch of people that had high skills keeping the robots running.
Right.
And so, yes, they lost jobs, they gained jobs. They didn't gain as many as they lost, but the jobs they gained required a different skill level.
Exactly. And not just a different skill level, but that's also a different pay level.
Yes.
So the notion that, what's all these low-paying jobs? No, actually, they replaced all those low-paid employees with automation, and now it's the high-skill, high-paid jobs that are in demand,
Even in
everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, really,
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's
And we would have more jobs if we had skilled labor. A piece of data that I saw, North Carolina, my understanding has done a really great job with industry certifications. And the data I saw, they had more than 10 times the number of industry certifications that we had in Kansas. Kids earn 10 times. You want to know why businesses are moving to North Carolina? Skilled workforce.
skilled workforce. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So it's an interesting time, and the implications then, we talk about this all the time. If you have a kid that enters as a freshman, no intent of ever going to a 4-year university, do they need the same 4 years of English, math, and science
Right.
that a kid that wants to go to the University of Kansas?
Right. Yeah.
Well, the answer is clearly no.
No, right.
No. Are we going to do something to meet their needs? Or are we just going to say, tough, go sit in those classes and,
Well, traditionally, yes.
That's what we've done.
Right. We've been like, yeah, too bad. I know you're not going to go. I know you don't care anything
and
about
I know
this.
you'll never
but-
use this in your
right,
life.
Right.
But it's good for you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's better for you to have it.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that I've got a student in college, not a student, a child. I have a child in college, and I have a child who's now in 9th grade. And I can remember when my son was going through, he's the one in college, I can remember when he was going through a bunch of the stuff that he was doing and taking a lot of those math classes and stuff. And he was like, he said, this is, he said, this advanced math, he said, I'm not interested in doing any of this at all. This is not really what I want to do. I don't understand why I'm having to take it. And I told him, and I was joking, but by the same token, because this is the way things go, talking about what we're talking about, I said, the reason why you have to at least understand or at least have an exposure to this math is so that when you have kids, if we're still going down this ridiculous path, at least you can say, oh yeah, I think I saw that when I was in high school. Let me see if I can get a vague remembrance of how that did so that I can show you as my kid so that if we're still going down that ridiculous path, you can show your kid when you have a kid. I mean, It's ludicrous, but that's...
Yeah, you know what's interesting about that? One of the discussions that's going on in Kansas is, you know how it was with No Child Left Behind. Everybody published their test scores. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting, we raised test scores across the board in Kansas, across the country. We raised test scores. We didn't see any increase in graduation rate.
Right.
We didn't see any increase in success rate.
Yes.
They are not correlated.
No.
They are not correlated, but it's really, it's causing a different conversation about maybe this is an actual real conversation that's going on. We should have a dashboard for every high school in the state that shows how many kids started 9th grade, how many dropped out, how many went to any post-secondary institution, any of them, they all matter, how many were successful, what's your success rate, and are you showing improvement in your success rate?
Right.
Rather than publishing test scores, what if we publish success rates?
Right.
You want to see the curriculum and how we teach and,
Yes.
You want to see that stuff change? Start comparing schools in the newspaper.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right.
Because we spent 15 years doing nothing but focusing on standardized tests.
Right. Yes. That's exactly right.
So I always enjoy talking while I'm standing on my soapbox.
Hey,
that's the way it works.
That's
sometimes.
what this is here for.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's what we get to do.
The related conversations, though, are amazing because once you say, do these kids need the same 4 years of English?
Right.
Well, then a conversation we had was, we have a ton of kids in 9th grade that can't read at a level to be successful.
Right.
How in the world did they get to 9th grade and not being able to read? Mm-hmm. Well, what are we going to do about the kids that are in 9th grade right now? And what are we going to do so they don't get here unable to read?
Exactly.
In the past, and the reality was this. Larry Lozano, Effective Schools Movement, always talked about the role of schools was to sort and classify.
Right.
And we sorted out all the kids that were capable of being successful, K-12 and and college. Mm-hmm. And it was okay because we had enough graduates to fill those jobs, and everyone else went out and did an unskilled job and worked hard.
Right.
The numbers worked out. They don't anymore.
No, not even close.
Yeah, so...
No.
You want to have a discussion, get together a group of high school English teachers and talk about you've got to change what you teach.
Yeah.
And not only what you teach, how you teach.
Right. Yes.
You better have your tennis shoes on, your running shoes, when you have that conversation.
And some body armor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're going to take a piece of your butt before it's over with.
Yeah. Well, and not just English teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Really any subject area, but especially things like, look at history teachers. Again, like you said, English teachers. Look, and one of the things that it still truly amazes me that yes, in some school districts we are getting back into incorporating some of the humanities and some districts are, and I'm just going to say this, allowing creativity to come back in.
Yeah.
But
Actually,
we're
they're
still,
not allowing it back in. They're just doing less to kill it.
Well, okay, that's a good point. good point. Yes. Schools, some districts are no longer educating the creativity and imagination out of our students.
That's exactly right.
And I truly do hope that is something that continues in the guises under the kind of that umbrella of changing what education looks like for public schools. And if we can get more districts focused on, essentially what we've been talking circles around and not saying outright, this the notion of individualized education. What is going to be best, not just what's best for, 8th grade students who were born in such and such a year. What's best for David Henderson as a student based on what he is interested in, based on what he, at this point, even in 8th grade, thinks he wants to do, not for the rest of his life. And I think that's still part of the
I don't want a kid in 8th
trap.
grade to decide I'm going to be a plumber.
Right, well, not just that, but life is not the way it was.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, really, truly, by 9th, 10th grade, we had a pretty good idea of what we thought we were going to do for the rest of our lives. Now, of course, I didn't go that direction. I had planned to be a doctor, and then I met several chemistry classes who convinced me otherwise. So, but at that time...
Well, you needed to learn to balance an equation, which no doctor ever does.
Yeah, right. Well, and not just that, but I had to learn how to mix particular chemicals in order to produce a very specific, what do you call it, like hue of color. How many doctors are doing that? I have no idea. I've gone to my doctor for many, many years, and he's never done that
So
I've
far.
ever seen. But he could. but where I'm going with all that is generally speaking. Now, if you have a student who they want to be a doctor, a lawyer, that you want to be a teacher. Yeah, there are definitely, okay, then, you're sure that's what you want to do, or at least now that's what you want to do. We're going to put you on this path, and eventually that's where you're going to end up.
Yeah.
The thing about it is, though, most students today, whether they know it or not, and I think really it's not just students, I think it's adults. Most adults today don't realize that students are not going to have careers. Students are going to have multiple jobs over their lifespan, and those jobs require certain skill sets for the time they're doing those particular jobs. So even if it's somebody who's coming out and right now, like there's a young guy. Well, he used to be part of our group, and he left and went. He's now a coder and a programmer and whatever all else he does for a startup in Little Rock. He's early mid 20s. Okay, so late 20s. That's what he's doing right now. Is he going to do that for the rest of his life? I would bet all the money I'm ever going to make, no, not even close. No. My guess is probably in not even 5 years.
To artificial intelligence is starting to do the coding.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
My guess is in 5 years he's going to have a completely different job. And is he going to do that for the rest of his life?
No.
He'll do that for however many years before he decides, oh, you know what? I think I'm going to try this over here. We are not in that lifetime career environment anymore.
That's right.
And yet, how many schools, colleges, even just any post-secondary, not just 4-year. And again, I even said colleges as the 4-year assumption, but any post-secondary, we have to break that mindset that when we get a student, that student is going to go down this particular path for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, right.
It's just not the way of
but my favorite example of it was my father. My dad graduated high school, went to work for was then Hudson Foods with Tyson. Learned to fly a plane, was flying from Hope to Bentonville, Arkansas, moving the guys back and forth. And then that was fun for a while. He did that for a few years, and then he decided, we're gonna grow tomatoes and cucumbers. And we had massive greenhouses. And he was a farmer, grew tomatoes and cucumbers. And then massive snowstorm and sleet storm one year destroyed most of the plastic and everything. So he was like, I'm gonna go in the body shop business. And he went to the body shop business. And to this day, he's put 2 children through school and, great-grandchildren and grandchildren and the whole bit. and with a high school diploma.
Yeah.
But the thing that never stopped him was no one said, okay, Kenneth, you're 15. What are you going to do for the rest of your life? You got to make a decision now.
Right.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. And it's interesting. Our parents wanted more for us. Well, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. You're not going to. We've got 80 acres, but you're not going to come back here and do this 80 acres. You're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. And I see where that came from, that mindset. Mm-hmm. But we have to get out of that mindset. I know 2 guys right now that can't break out of a certain mold because right here it was drilled into us. You got to do these things.
Yeah.
You can't get out of this track. Once you're in that track, you just hook onto the line and you keep rolling. And we're doing it to our kids right now. Mm-hmm. And right now, Brad Wade's in there talking about YouTube, and he's talking about Minecraft, and he's talking about the fact that, and we know people that are making a living on YouTube.
Right.
I mean, every kid with a cell phone is a newscaster. And guess what? You don't have to have a degree from Duke to be a newscaster.
Right.
Yeah.
You could go out and shoot it yourself and go back home, and the next thing you know,
You hone your craft, somebody will hire you if you want to be hired.
If you want to be, and
But you don't have to be.
But
they don't have to
that's
be.
exactly.
he could get 10,000 viewers, and 10,000 people go, Steve gives great news. I'm just going to watch Steve's news every day.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve goes, hey, I'm my own newscast right here in my bedroom, and I'm just going to upload my stuff, and I'm done every day.
Right.
And pretty soon he finds that, wow, I'm making enough money I'm going to go cover Afghanistan war this week and put it on a backpack, go out, stuff. I mean, we're working on some great things here, and it's a whole the entrepreneur thing is there, and
Yeah.
I guess that's what's really interesting. We can talk about millennials and snowflakes and safety this and all that stuff, but the really interesting part about that is that they actually are unafraid. Where we were,
Yeah.
I've got to decide a major. I have to get a job.
Right.
I've got to go out and get a job. Well, no, the first part is being happy. And these kids, they get that idea of they're not really afraid of anything. We think they're afraid of stuff. I don't feel safe. Okay, well, we can fix that. But the other part of it is that they're not afraid to find a job and work it until they go, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah.
We see that in our kids. This is fun for right now, but I'm going to go try something else.
Right.
And that's the funny part. We're not that way, but to our kids, we are. Are you happy? Go do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Make your way.
Another thing that we see, and being old, I've lived through this, is that, and I read a great quote, and it was, in my day, we were experience rich and information poor.
Right.
When I grew up, there were 3 TV channels.
Right.
There was no internet, no local library where I lived.
Yeah.
And so I relied on my parents, my teachers, and textbooks as the only place I could get information. And I wasn't going to open a textbook if you put a gun to my head. Okay. And today, though, our kids are information rich and experience poor.
Yeah.
They're not out doing the kinds of things, especially in our rural areas, kids that grew up on a farm actually farming.
Yeah.
Our farms are so big now, kids that live on them don't even work them.
Right.
They're so big. But we talk to kids today about what do you want to be when you grow up. They haven't had any experiences. And the stuff that we did for so long, the art, the drama, athletics is still a good one. Kids experience that.
Yeah.
Our kids don't ever get a chance to go, I really don't like working outside, or I really do. I really don't like working with other people.
Right.
I'd rather deal with ideas than things.
Right.
And they don't know. They can't answer those questions. How do you decide what you want to do if you haven't done anything to know what you like?
Right. Yes, that's exactly.
And, that comes back to that
brilliant. Yes.
Project-based learning.
Yeah.
Let's start doing stuff. I don't know if you guys know Glenn Wiebe that's in our office, works for us. Glenn, at the national level, is actively involved with social studies and the development of the new social studies standards and the state standards and all that. And he and I visit regularly about this stuff, mainly because we got to talk about something when we're playing golf. Okay. But it's the idea, we're kicking around the idea that what social studies should look like now is built around civic engagement. And wouldn't it be really interesting to have a class where every kid had the same assignment? Do something to improve your community.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to do it in a team, do it. If you want to do it alone.
Yeah.
And somebody says, well, what do you mean by community? I said, I don't care.
Right.
It could be the state. It could be local. It
Right.
could be the peer group. And it could be the kids that say, we want to build a skate park. Well,
Right.
what are you going to do to build that?
Right.
Go solve it.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you want to accomplish?
Yes.
You hit it on the- we were
Yes.
just talking about that. I told David the other day, I've been reading a lot about that. And I think that that's part of our problem. And the issue is that I'm glad the kids get protesting, but they can't take the feedback from it because they don't understand citizenship. They don't understand the civics and the social studies. We've lost that in our school system. We've lost citizenship, what it's like to be a citizen, and the give and take. Like, you say what you got, and then I'm going to say what I got. But we both have to accept each other and work together to fix it. And citizenship is, I think, the biggest skill. You hit it right on the head.
And, you know, when I grew up, social studies, history was sit down, take notes for 4 days, and on Friday tell the teacher what he told you the other 4 days.
Yes.
You know?
Exactly.
And I hated that.
Yes.
And that I'm really good at trivia crack.
Yeah.
That's the one good thing that came out of it. Other than that, nothing useful.
That's right. When I'm on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, I'll phone you as my friend. That's
Okay. Now the problem is I'm old, so my memory's shot.
Well, that's okay.
I mean, so it's diminishing returns on that. But we've got to
awesome.
completely rethink.
Yeah.
What do we do in schools? And we're not preparing kids to be compliant workers in factories anymore.
Right.
And I hear all the time. I try to be polite, but I don't always accomplish it when I say, well, we can't give up all that good stuff because it was so important. Kids weren't getting it anyway.
Right.
Many schools have replicated this, and it's really easy to do. Take the kids from the spring, and the next fall, give them the final exams that they took back in the spring, and see how they do.
Right.
They suck.
Yeah.
They can't do them.
Right.
They didn't learn anything.
No, right.
I had a friend at the University of Kansas in the College of Ed, and I spoke to every kid at the University of Kansas for 11 years that was going to be a teacher.
Right.
Okay, so we would always talk about those kinds of things. Is that learning, or is it temporary memorization?
Sure.
And there's a huge difference.
Oh, absolutely.
And one kid raised his hand. He said, "We used to call it memorize and flush."
There you go.
Memorize it, take the test, flush it from your brain. Don't ever think about it again.
Right.
That's not learning.
No. How many tests did we take when we went to college where that's exactly what we did? We crammed for the test, we cram it all in there, and then we regurgitate it out. That's it was we didn't learn anything, or very little of it stuck, but most of it we just puked back out again on the test, and that was it. Never again did we ever use it.
I had 2 roommates in college that we were all 3 in the same biology class, and it met Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So one of us went on Monday, one on Wednesday, one on Friday, and we took notes and we shared the notes, and at test time we would quiz each other and go back and forth, go take the test, pass it, get a decent grade, sometimes not as decent as others, and forget it.
Right. Exactly. And to that end though, so not as a decent a grade. So maybe this time maybe you got a C on the test this time. Okay, so what? I could pull C's the entire time, and guess what? I still get the piece of paper with my name on it. So why am I busting my butt? I don't have to, Now, if I'm not that kind of person, if I happen to be intrinsically motivated, so that now because of my own, the things that make me say, well, no, that's not good enough for me. Okay, that's different. But what's the old adage? What do they call that guy who graduates medical school with a D? Yeah, doctor.
Exactly.
I mean, sorry, but that's the truth of it.
Exactly.
I was a band director, a music ed major.
Yeah.
It's different. The school that I went to was a small liberal arts college, but the interesting part was I played all the time. I was the only bass player there, so whether it was jazz or orchestra or whatever, I'm playing all the time.
Yeah.
The one thing that I retain in my brain is music and playing bass.
Yeah.
You know why? Because it was hands-on, all hands on deck, all the time.
All the time.
That's a really big part of it. And the first 2 years you go to college are just jumping through hoops.
Yeah.
As we call it in the music industry, paying dues.
Yeah.
I'm going to pay dues for the first 2 years, and then when you hit a junior, well, now, what's your major? Well, let's get you a little more in depth on it, maybe. But that's the problem.
Yeah.
Is that I think that the hands-on part of it, getting yourself dirty, that's what makes you remember that. And just like Dr. Wyckoff's talking about, when you give these kids okay, go do one thing in your community, that's going to stick. Because most likely, if they build a skate park, they're skaters. Mm-hmm. And they're going to keep skating. And they go, well, we built a skate park. Now what are we going to do? I don't know. Let's raise some funding for lighting. We can skate at night.
Right.
Great idea. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, let's...
But you got to go to city council, make sure we'll see what the ordinances are.
And you come back and go, how do we do that? Great. That's our next lesson. And here's this. So now go to 3 different, city council meetings so you learn what's going on.
Yeah.
Right.
Meet with the mayor and talk about how do I do a proposal.
Right.
And then come back and tell us how to do it. Tell us, the rest of us, how do we get a proposal?
Oh, and by the way, if there's an ordinance against what you want to do, how do you change an ordinance?
Right. How do you change the ordinance?
I had
Somebody wrote it.
Yeah.
Right.
I had so many kids
outside of I'm going to be obnoxious here, but outside of carrying signs and blocking highways, how do you do that?
But I had so many kids in band that are great kids. 3rd chair trumpet player, every day does his job, loves music. Not going to be a trumpet player. Not going to be a musician. Going to be a great lawyer. You ever think about going into law in music? You know how many musicians need lawyers? You know how many companies need lawyers that do music? Every genre can incorporate every other genre somehow. Mm-hmm. And we don't teach our kids that. No. We don't say, you're a terrible football player, but every time after the game, take this iPad and interview your guys because you're great. Guys love to talk to you. So go in and interview the guys. You're the 4th center. You're never going to... Senior night, that's when you're going to play.
Right.
But every game, you can interview the guys and put it up on your blog, put it up on your podcast.
Well, and that's one of the things that we talk about when we go into schools and we talk about, when we talk about podcasting, generally speaking, that's our thing at this point, one of our things. And we talk about how you can do what we do, talking into a microphone and incorporate it in the classroom. But here's the thing, most folks, and I realize this is a huge generalization, but most folks can't stand to hear their voice after it comes back.
Yeah.
That's not what I don't sound like that. That doesn't sound like me at all. Yeah, that's exactly how the rest of the world hears you. You don't hear it that way.
You'll live.
But, yeah, exactly. But here's the thing. So you don't like to do the talking side. That's fine. What about, do you like to write? What about scripting? Oh, you like to do the post-production editing part of that? You don't want to hear yourself, but you like to put the pieces and parts together to help shape what others who are recording sound like? There's so many other facets, and this gets back to what Jeff's talking about. Oh, I know, you like music. Well, how about if you compose an original piece that can now be used as the intro for the podcast that your other classmates are doing on their show? Yeah. There's so many different pieces and parts that can all tie together.
David does voiceovers.
Well, yeah.
And there's voice work.
Right.
You wake up, you sit down at your mic, and you do your voiceover, and people hire you to go, hey, I need somebody to do this commercial.
Okay.
Great.
Right, exactly.
I record it, I send it over the web, I'm done. You make a great living? Yeah, I do. I make a pretty good living. I spend the afternoons working at the library. I give time downtown. I'm building a skate park with the kids over here.
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
But that's it's funny. The mentality of America in capitalism is work, money. In Europe, it's not that at all. Mm-hmm. In Asia, it's stay alive. But but in Europe, I mean, it really is. It's work, live.
Yeah.
Write, play music.
Well, and I would say that a lot of students today, a lot of these quote unquote kids, the kids to us, we're old, but a lot of I think that is the mentality of a lot of kids today. They see life. They want to enjoy life, and I think a lot of us old fogies really struggle with that.
Oh, I don't.
Because
I play golf every time I get a chance.
Well, there you go. But I really do. I think a decent chunk of the older generation in America has a real hard time with the younger generation who isn't going out there work, making money. They're out. A lot of those younger folks are experiencing life. They're trying different things. They're doing different things. Like Jeff said, they're not. Yes, there are things they're afraid of, or they think they're afraid of. But there's a whole other facet to life that they're not afraid to go climb this or go there, or and as a parent, if my son came and said, you know what, I think I'm going to go tour Europe for a year. Well, how are you going to live? What are you going to do? I don't know. Put a bunch of stuff in a backpack and we'll see what happens. Yeah. It's and I realize there have been pockets of that throughout history.
And we do our best to beat that out of kids.
We try. We try really hard
to beat that out of kids.
We really try.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I've had this ongoing for quite some time, interest in understanding how people learn. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you guys know Roger Schenck. Roger's written 28 books, and he's an interesting guy. I got to know Roger, and he was the chairman of the computer science program at Yale University, and he was one of the first artificial intelligence scientists.
Okay.
And this is way back in the very early days. He was studying how people learned in order to apply it to machines. Okay? And what he found is that as he studied how learning occurred, it had nothing to do with what his kids were doing in school. So he literally switched to cognitive psychology and was at Stanford and was at Northwestern and started programs in learning sciences.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of learning is it's amazing, and it's totally ignored in schools.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You ready to get rid of me? I mean, I could sit here 6 hours.
We have a guest.
we have another guest coming up. But
come back
I'll come back later.
as I was going to say, as always, it's been awesome talking to you.
Was that our 10-minute interview?
That was our 10-minute interview.
An hour?
Hey, you know what, though? That's what's awesome, though. I mean, it really is. We can talk to you about anything. So, definitely come
and
back,
some of
man.
it even intelligently.
Intelligently. Notice I kept quiet most of the time.
See you guys.
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks, man. That was Dr. Steve Wyckoff over at ESDAC visiting with us about, all kinds of stuff.